Hey Ganesh, I thought we'd take a look at the internet weather for this week. A couple of little weird things that show up in the most sources probing, but this one, the first one here is the most probe ports, which is just sheer volume of scanning activity, irrespective of how many people are doing it.
Okay.
And I'm going to skip over the ones we see all the time, like Telnet and SSH. We're not going to talk about them really, but 1911 TCP I'll call out because that is, most of this is benign. And that's the Tritium Niagara protocol, which is a building automation protocol. 8545 is the Ethereum wallet that has a vulnerability, and there's been a couple of big thefts of the Ethereum cryptocurrency due to some vulnerable wallets out there. And then the last one that I'll point out from here is the 5555 TCP, which is the Android debugger. We've been talking about that for probably a few months now.
Yeah.
And it actually shows up more in the most sources probing, so we'll take a look at that more over here. So the ones I'll point out here, even though the only ones I'm gonna have some charts on are the red ones, but 8080 TCP, we know that that's related mostly to the GPON router vulnerability that came out maybe a month or two, something ago. We're gonna go take a look at these in closer detail. We'll talk about them when I get to them. The rest of them are somewhat innocuous. 81 TCP is probably the go-ahead web server vulnerability that's out there. But some of this other stuff might just be whatever. This large uptick in 53 UDP, I'm going to guess is probably related to some increase in people either looking for open DNS servers for uses in DNS reflection attacks or something of that nature. That's my guess as to why there's an uptick in that activity. I didn't get a chance to look in super detail on that one though. Well, let's jump into the ones that I thought were interesting. So this is port 528069 TCP. We've seen a pretty big uptick here.
That's a huge spike.
You know, as compared to usual. It's about 11,000 scan sources. It's big, not but super gigantic, but it's pretty big. It's significant because it's in the top 10. And we happen to know that this is actually an older vulnerability for the Realtek devices. And there is a CVE for it. So like it's been known about since 2014 timeframe. This probably related to the Satori botnet getting in on the game, using that as a means to propagate to other types of devices that it hadn't before. Port 8080 TCP, this is a web alternate port. We see it a lot on a lot of software. This uptick coincides with the May 10th, or the May 10th uptick here, I should say, where we had some of it, and there actually was a bit back here, but around this May 10th time frame, it really shot up to about 30,000 scan sources per hour, maybe at peaks of 40,000. This is when the GPON router vulnerability was announced, and I just brought this article up here. So this is the guys at NetLab 360 who've been putting out some really good security analysis reporting lately. Their article came out on May 10th, and that directly aligns with it. And they also call out the various forms of the various botnet families that are scanning for this typical, this type of exploit. And Satori's in there, Mirai is in there, Hajime is also kind of a Mirai-ish type variant as well. I don't know about the other ones as much. So 5431, this is another one. We've talked about this before in the past as well, and it's odd. We've never
really odd, like one spike coming down.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So why? And we've never actually been able to explain this.
Okay.
So the things about this, we know 5431 TCP. There is a vulnerability for Cisco Linksys with this, and it's been around for a while. I don't remember how many years. But the thing that's unusual about this is not a sawtooth waveform. It's more like a comb. But this is not normally what you would see with botnet related activity. Normally you do not see really super sharp spike rises and then decays that go off so quickly like this, like within an hour or two, it decays off to nothing. And the volumes are gigantic. We're talking about 80 to 90,000 scan sources per hour we see all of a sudden in unison scanning for this. So it's really weird. I've asked around other people. Nobody actually. Other people have seen this as well. We're not the only ones seeing it, but I haven't really gotten any good answers to explain this activity. I've also not been able to capture any of these probes in any of our honeypots, which is also kind of confusing. I do see. It looks like they scan like the start and stop ranges for their scanning. Is not always the entire internet. It's like certain part of the internet. So maybe there's something to that too that needs to be studied more. I don't know if this is the last one or not, but 5555 TCP, the Android debug bridge, is another one that we've talked about for a while here. I actually, this is a 180-day chart, so about 6 months. I think right before here, like if I did a 7-month chart, you would have saw that there was nothing back here, and then it kind of upticked, and it had stayed around the 5,000 to 7,000 scan sources per hour really consistently for a long time. And then maybe early July here, we started to see a more like botnet shape-ish, right? Because you get this sawtooth waveform again starting up, where you get these spikes and decays, and that is when. So what was this? This is maybe like July. Let's say 7th. That is about when July 8th. NetLab 360 started reporting that the Satori botnet started scanning for port 5555. So they had probably a few of these running, or they're doing some instrumentation to watch the activity of Satori, and they noticed that that was added as a feature as part of their propagation, is to scan for that 5555 TCP. So those are the ones that I thought were interesting to keep an eye on, especially if you have any of this type of hardware in your environment, would be good candidates for making sure they're all patched up and whatnot. And I think that's all I had for this week.
The trend seems to be related to IoT-related botnets. I think those are the key takeaways from this week's Internet Webinar.